Hello, everybody. It's great to be back with you today for this May installment of the Human Capital Innovations webinar. Today, the topic is maximizing employee engagement by leveraging a sustainable organizational social impact strategy. I know that's a mouthful, but we're going to get through it. And I'm really excited about this topic. It's something that I'm very passionate about. Before we jump on in, and before I even do a little personal introduction, I just wanted to say, given the current circumstances of COVID-19, the global pandemic, and the reality that we are all facing with working from home and juggling family life and work life and dealing with the emotional toll that social isolation brings with it, as well as the fear and anxiety connected with social isolation, people losing jobs, the economy, that not to mention all the health issues. You know, it's a struggle, it's a challenge, and I just want to acknowledge and validate any concerns that any of you may have at this time. And I hope that your involvement in the webinar will be beneficial, and that it'll help give you hope, and that it'll help to help you feel like you can take control over at least some small aspect of your life. I also, in relation to that, just want to say I do apologize if there's noise that comes from my family. I am, like all of you, working from home. I'm recording this from home. I'm currently in my bedroom recording this webinar while my family is out having lunch. So, you know, my wife and 6 children at times can be noisy. My dogs can be noisy. So if any of them happen to make some noise and ruckus, I hope that you will be forgiving of that and understanding, recognizing that we're kind of all in the same situation right now. For those of you who have joined the webinar series in the past, you know a little bit about me, but let me just take a moment and do a little bit more of a personal introduction. I'm a professor of organizational leadership in the Woodbury School of Business at Utah Valley University, where I've worked for 11 years now. I'm also the department chair, and I'm the academic director of the Center for Social Impact at UVU. Now, that title should give you a clue as to the passion that I have for the social impact topic that we're going to be exploring together today. And of course, I am the managing partner and principal at Human Capital Innovations. And for the last couple of decades, I've been working with organizations from across the globe on how to develop positive cultures, employee-centric policies and practices, as well as issues like utilizing and leveraging social impact initiatives and programs to engage their employees. So that's what I'm going to be talking with you about today. And as always, I welcome questions, comments. You can either reach out to me by email, offline, or connect with me through the Human Capital Innovations website, however best works for you. But I would love to continue this conversation after the webinar is over, so that we can explore together what you might be able to do within your organizations to really truly maximize the potential of your employees and to leverage their human capital in such a way that it can lead to greater sustainable organizational success. Here you can see what we're going to cover in the next little bit. I'll start briefly with what is social impact? Of course, it's something I feel very passionately about. It's something I spend a lot of time thinking about, and I spend a lot of my time, both in terms of research, teaching, consulting, working with organizations in this area, but I recognize it's not something that's probably on the forefront of most of your minds. So hopefully over the course of this webinar that you'll have a better sense of what it is and how you might be able to utilize it. But I'll start there. What's the business case for organizational social impact initiatives and programming? We'll walk through that briefly. I want to present to you a couple of models that can be utilized as you try to think about holistic, system-wide social impact. So the pathways of social impact is something that has come out of Stanford and University of Minnesota and a working group from across the nation as they try to recognize and understand how to have more sustainable, long-lasting, meaningful, holistic impact in our communities. The Active Citizen Continuum, which comes from a nonprofit called Breakaway. I'll walk you through what that means and really what both of those models can mean for what you might be able to do in your organization. I'll provide a brief example of social impact within a corporate setting and how that can be utilized. And then ultimately we'll finish off with action steps for organizational leaders. What can each of you do right now to get the ball rolling so you can have meaningful impact within your organizations? So let's start with social impact. What is it? In a nutshell, what we're trying to do, whether it's in a government capacity, nonprofit, corporate, an educational setting, across industries, across sectors, we have an opportunity through the work we do in our organizations to impact our communities. So the question is, are we purposeful and meaningful and strategic in how we go about thinking about that impact? And will it be a positive impact or will it be a negative impact? We hear in the news all the time stories of negative impact. In fact, those negative stories tend to get a lot of coverage, right? So you have an oil spill, you have some sort of negative environmental impact that gets covered. You have some sort of an organization who does something that ultimately impacts negatively on the community health, that gets covered. There's all these different types of negative social impact that can occur. But certainly organizations also do positive things to help and build their communities around them and to respond to larger societal social issues and challenges. And that's really what social impact is all about, is that we want to try to utilize the resources of our organization to not only provide a great product and service that consumers want, but also through those same activities that we can also benefit our surrounding communities. That can happen in a variety of ways. So in this graphic, you see a lot of those different types of things. Social entrepreneurship, where you're using business and social and entrepreneurial ideas to further social causes. Social enterprise in a nonprofit setting or a corporate setting. There's all sorts of issues that you can look at: human and civil rights, social impact within the educational sphere, public sector and public policy related work, environmental sustainability, international development. The focus today is a little bit more on the corporate social impact element, but all these can apply. The relationship to health, impact investing, so on and so forth. There's so many different ways that this can be implemented and different ways that it looks. There's no one size fits all, but the bottom line is that we want to try to think strategically about what we're doing within our organizations so that we can help the communities around us and the people that we serve in our organizations. So what's the business case for social impact initiatives? It certainly sounds nice, right? We want to, through the work that we do in our organization, we want to better society. We want to better our communities. That sounds nice. It's good PR. But is there an actual tangible business case for doing it as well beyond the PR spin? And I think there's a significant amount of research that demonstrates that absolutely yes, there is a clear business case directly going to the bottom line of the organization, that organizations that are more socially minded are more sustainable organizations, and they can see a wide variety of positive outcomes for their organization, including higher profitability. So that's important, right? Organizational leaders need to understand that what they're doing will have an ROI. The time and effort that I put into these initiatives will ultimately pay off. It'll make the organization stronger. It will help us represent ourselves better to shareholders and to investors and so forth. Of course, all of that's very important. But before I jump into some of those, I want to really focus on for a moment the importance of being a good corporate citizen. Let's set aside all bottom line elements for a moment. Of course, businesses are in business to make money. Businesses are in business to provide a product and service to the consumer. That's all understood. But businesses also benefit from social infrastructure, public infrastructure. They benefit greatly often through tax breaks, to invite new companies to come into an area. There's a whole wide range of ways that organizations benefit from public infrastructure and from the surrounding community. And so I think it's necessarily vital that we consider the importance of being a good corporate citizen in and of itself, separate from any way that it'll benefit us, but just the fact that we need to be good corporate citizens. In today's world, I think that's more important than it has ever been before. We need to be good corporate citizens. So I hope you'll think about that. I hope you'll think about your organization and what you're doing to be a good corporate citizen, what you're doing as a leader to be a good corporate citizen, and how you're portraying that value to your employees. In and of itself is vital. It's very important. But now that I've said that, there is a really clear business case for doing this as well. It will help your organization. One of the main ways is through increased employee engagement. There's a lot of research. I've done a lot of research myself, but there's others that have done a lot of research on social impact initiatives and how that can help attract and retain great employees. Employees today, they want to feel like their work is making a difference. There's a variety of things they want to get from their workplace experience. They want interesting work. They want to be challenged. They want to have an opportunity to stretch and grow. They want opportunities for promotions. They want to further develop their skills. They want to build meaningful professional relationships, so on and so forth. There's all these things that employees want to do in the workplace. But when we look at the employees of today, particularly millennial and Gen Z workers, they are disproportionately driven by the desire to drive a social good. That the work knowing that the work that they do will ultimately benefit the world, benefit society, that they individually and then collectively can make a difference and provide a positive social impact in their communities. So when we can embed those types of opportunities and experiences within the workplace, within the general scope of the duties of a given worker, obviously they have to do a whole range of things, but if a piece of it can be directly driven towards social impact strategy, you can leverage that in so many ways to enhance the engagement of your employees. And of course, there's tremendous amount of research showing the benefits of employee engagement. More engaged employees stick around, they perform better, they're more innovative, so on and so forth. So the business case for social impact initiatives within a corporation is directly linked to employee engagement. When we engage our employees through social impact efforts, we are helping our business. It also leads to other intangible types of value for our organization: brand loyalty and reputation. There is a PR spin. In the business world, we hear a lot about corporate social responsibility, the triple bottom line, all of these different issues that, at least within the broader community in terms of reputation, are seen as important. And that is absolutely true. So if I want my organization to be seen by the consumers and by the labor market, potential employees, as a socially responsible organization, a socially responsible brand, that will enhance my brand loyalty. The consumers will keep coming back. It'll enhance my public reputation. It'll help me to be able to better sell my products and services and to attract and retain great employees. It's a really attractive organizational culture. We hear a lot about this in the tech industry, high-tech type companies that tend to focus on these types of initiatives, these cultural values and such. but it's not unique to tech. It can apply to any type of organization, nonprofit, for-profit, government, educational, whatever, across industries and sectors. A socially minded organizational culture is an attractive culture for most employees, particularly millennial and Gen Z employees. It also helps enhance employee and employer relationships, because when I as a leader demonstrate to my employees that I understand what's important to them and that I'm giving them a chance and an opportunity to do a little bit more of what they're passionate about each and every day, when I do that as a leader, I build trust, and I demonstrate to them that I see them, I hear them, I value them, and that I want to leverage their passions to both help the organization and help develop them as a person and help our broader communities. And then there's lots of research that shows that it does things like enhancing, or it increases organizational citizenship behaviors, being a good team player. There's a whole variety of different ways that manifests. Enhancing employee creativity and innovation, which of course is what we all need and want. We all need agile employees and leaders who can adapt to emerging situations and shifting contexts. And that requires a lot of creativity, and we have to think on our feet. We have to be innovative. We need engaged employees to do that, and we can do that better when we tap into those social impact passions that people have. Increased employee organizational commitment. Given the current state of the world economy and the nature of organizations, the shifting psychological contract, many organizations don't show a large amount of commitment and loyalty to their employees, and vice versa. Employees often don't show a lot of commitment to their employer. And so you see a lot of movement. You see a lot of employees jumping ship and moving to other organizations. Some of that's inevitable, right? It's just the nature of the economy we live in, the world we live in today, and the nature of current economic system. But you can, that's not inevitable. You can have greater levels of organizational commitment. You can demonstrate your commitment to your employees, and you can earn that trust and commitment back from them. And this is one of those ways you can do that. And then it just amplifies employee motivation and performance in so many ways. So it's a very powerful mechanism to do a lot of these really positive elements that have been demonstrated in the academic literature and in the professional, practitioner-oriented research and studies for decades. And as I do my own consulting work and I work with organizations, I've seen firsthand how positive all of these types of initiatives can be, and how these behaviors, values can be enhanced within an organization. Let me talk briefly now about the pathways of social impact. So a few slides back, you saw the graphic of a variety of different ways that social impact might manifest itself. Here is another way of thinking about it. The pathways of social impact, again, comes out of Stanford, University of Minnesota, and a working group of like-minded individuals from across the country who basically were trying to understand how can we better benefit our communities, and recognizing that kind of old models tended to focus in a more limited way, failing to see a more holistic picture of how we might address really complex social problems. So here you can see 6 main pathways. Now we could divide these up into, we could parse this out even further and have more categories, but 6 is a good number to help us wrap our minds around the general idea of like all the different elements systematically that we would need to think about to respond to a social issue. Direct service. Sometimes we just have to volunteer. We have to go and sort cans at the food bank. We have to do a food drive and collect food. We have to go out and paint over graffiti and clean up the streets and help out, doing volunteering directly to organizations and to individuals in need. That's important. That always will be important. But we cannot and we will never be able to volunteer our way out of poverty, for example. Despite all the best of intentions that someone might have, just volunteering isn't going to accomplish any meaningful, sustainable social impact in that area. It's one important element of many, right? Now I'll come back to that example in a minute. Community engaged learning and research. So universities, for example, as anchor institutions can be leveraged. And I do this a lot in my home university at Utah Valley University, where I'll send my students out to do consulting projects with local nonprofits and government agencies, where they will do organizational development and change management consulting projects to help benefit those organizations so they can do a better job of serving, of providing their products and services to their service population and have a broader social impact. So as professors work with students and community partners and conduct community-based research, do community-based projects, universities and institutions of education, both at the K through 12 as well as the university level, they can be anchor institutions and they can provide a great amount of value back to the community. So that's important. Social entrepreneurship and corporate social responsibility. Now, when a lot of people think of corporate social impact, this is the one they usually think about. They think about social entrepreneurship, social enterprise. They think about the triple bottom line and being a socially responsible organization. That's all really important. And having market-oriented responses to social problems, to address challenges and issues, that's all really great. But in and of itself, you're not going to attack and really resolve major complex societal issues just through social entrepreneurship and corporate social responsibility. We have policy and governance, participating in the political process, policy making, community organizing and activism, where you're involving, educating, and mobilizing individuals for collective action, and philanthropy, donating or using private funds or charitable contributions from individuals or institutions to contribute to the public good. Now, if we can see societal problems from all of these different angles, and then we can create programs and initiatives that we can tap our people into their passions in relation to these different areas, then we can have a holistic social impact strategy for a particular issue facing our community in which we work, that we can actually make a measurable difference in that issue. So just like a minute ago when I said we're not going to volunteer our way out of poverty, direct service is important, but we need to mobilize business, right, to address some of the underlying issues related to perpetual poverty. But we also need to leverage the resources that our institutions and our anchor institutions through community engaged learning and research. Policy and governance plays a huge role in terms of the various laws and advocacy that has to happen to resolve those sorts of issues. We can mobilize, we can help mobilize people in our communities to address these problems. We can fundraise, we can do all sorts of things, right? When we start to tackle things from all these different directions, that's when we have the chance to actually make a meaningful impact. Not just feel good about it, not just so that the warm fuzzy, so we can pat ourselves on the back and feel good about doing something good, but that we're actually helping people, that we're actually making the community a little bit better through what we're doing in our organization. Another way of thinking about this is the active citizen continuum. This comes from a nonprofit called Breakaway. It's a very simple process, but the idea is that people come to the social impact space with different background, with different experience, with different expertise. That's of course to be expected. And so we need to meet people where they're at. So within an organizational setting, if you have a corporate social impact strategy and initiatives and programs and events and things like that, some of your employees will come really with no knowledge or understanding. They might have an interest, they might even have a budding passion, but they may not really know where to start or what to do. So that they might come in at the member stage where they're not even particularly all that concerned about these problems, but maybe they come to an event because their coworker or their friend invited them. Once they become more aware and a little bit concerned, then they might move into the volunteer stage. Now they're well-intentioned, but not particularly well-educated about a complex social issue. So now maybe they're, going to the food bank. They're doing a food drive. They're trying to be proactive, right? Because they recognize it's important. But the next level up, a conscientious citizen, this is where they're concerned with discovering root causes. They're asking the deep questions. They're asking why. They're challenging the status quo and the conventional understanding. So an employee at this stage might be one who's working with a community partner organization, planning a social impact project or initiative directly. So now, their understanding is deepening, their involvement is deepening, their passion is deepening. And the active citizen is one that the community becomes a priority in values and life choice. It becomes a driving principle, driving value within them. And that's what we're trying to get to, right? But we need to recognize not everyone's going to be even close to that when we start our initiatives in our organization. But we can move people along this continuum as they get more involvement, more opportunity. Where ultimately we can have employees who are directly involved in social impact, running the social impact initiatives. It's really quite exciting when you see people progress in this way. So I wanted to give you a quick example of where I've seen this happen exceptionally well in the recent past. So there's a local company here in Orem, Utah, called Pinnacle Security. They sell security systems and things like that. I got in connection with several of the managers at Pinnacle, and one person who was at a VP level, and they were interested in some of the work I was doing at the university in terms of social impact, social entrepreneurship, social enterprise, those sorts of things. And so as we were talking, they were learning, and they were trying to see, well, what could we do within Pinnacle to really catalyze the energy of all these employees that feel strongly about these issues. They want to make an impact. They want to make a difference. What can we do? And so I worked with them, and they created a strategy. They created a whole series of events. They created a whole structure. In fact, creating a philanthropic arm of Pinnacle called Pinnacle Securing Hope. Now, Pinnacle Securing Hope became the area in the organization under which some of these initiatives happened. And it was run by employees who had their normal day job. And on top of what they were already doing in their normal job, they would put in extra time for this because it's something that they valued, that they were passionate about. They were committed to, even though it meant more work for no extra pay. Over the course of several years, Pinnacle Securing Hope did some amazing projects. The first one that I was directly involved in was the Sustain Haiti. So years ago, when the huge earthquake hit Haiti, they had some employees that had lived in Haiti and had connection there, and they were really concerned about that. And so they mobilized immediately, and they had hundreds of employees that were involved in a 5K event to raise funds. They did an employee matching program where employees could put money towards the cause. And ultimately, over the course of about a 6-month period, they raised about $150,000 that they were able to then take to Haiti to help locals there. They did a series of educational workshops to help individuals in Haiti. They provided microgrant funding. They did a whole variety of things that was hugely beneficial to help people who were in dire straits in Haiti. It was amazing for me to see the energy and the passion of these employees at Pinnacle during this time. Again, this is all extra. They're doing their normal jobs, but they're doing all of this on top of their normal work because they were passionate about it. And the amount of loyalty and commitment that was engendered in these employees because their passions, their budding passions were encouraged, fanning the flames of these passions. And ultimately, the company provided the support and the structure to be able to do these types of projects and programs. And the employees valued that. They valued that greatly. So the company benefited because it had employees that loved the company and were devoted and committed and working at higher levels of productivity. The employees were greatly benefited because they obviously, were loving work. They were loving going to work. They were loving being involved. They loved being able to help out. And of course, the community benefited. The surrounding community here locally benefited from having some of these events and opportunities for people to contribute, but also the community in Haiti benefited. So that was the first of many that started to come. A few years later, they did another one, Going Beyond Borders, where they went to help address concerns in Africa related to healthcare and education. They were able to raise a tremendous amount of money just within their pool of employees, who then were the people who went on these trips to staff these these projects. Really quite incredible. And then one that was really neat was Domes for the World. It's the idea for Domes for the World is that you go to countries and communities that are often devastated by hurricanes and other extreme weather, and you create these simple dome structures that can be built in a day. They're cheap to build, but they're very strong and sturdy, can withstand severe weather, and ultimately you're able to provide sustainable housing to a lot of people very cheaply. And another fantastic initiative where Pinnacle employees did all the planning, they raised the funds, they traveled to various locations in the global south to implement and create this housing for these individuals. Now, none of this was directly related to the main mission of Pinnacle, but because of the foresight of some of the organizational leaders, and perhaps a little bit of serendipity in terms of connections and getting people on the same page, this became just a tremendous opportunity for them that they've been able to build off of for years. I think this can happen in pretty much any organization. You listen to your employees, what they're passionate about, what they're interested in, and then you leverage existing systems within the company to carry out initiatives for the social good. It's a win-win-win. So let me start to wrap up here with some ideas for action steps for leaders. I think it's really important to create buy-in and commitment from top leadership. So in the Pinnacle example, there were a few key individuals, a couple that were at the kind of the lower middle management level, but one key individual who's at the VP level who really caught the vision and bought into it. That was really important because then they could have key conversations with others and ultimately get all the support necessary to start moving things forward. So you know that depending on the organization, its history, the leaders in your organization, that could be easier said than done. You know, that could be quite a process in and of itself, but you have to work towards developing and fostering leadership buy-in and commitment so that it can be seen as something that's simultaneously grassroots, but also with top-down support where people can see, their leaders demonstrating the importance they put on these initiatives through their involvement. I think that's very important. Fostering a shared society-centric organizational culture. I think regardless of what your organization does, regardless of the mission and the product or service that you provide, all organizations can have a foundation of a societal orientation and a society-centric culture. Employees want that. Well, most employees do, at least. Most employees want that, and we have an opportunity to leverage those passions. We need to then establish employee and community buy-in. So it's not just enough for leaders to say that it's important, but they have to start helping the employees understand the value and the importance and the opportunity that's there. But then you also have to connect with the community. And you have to be able to address real problems, real challenges, not just perceived problems, not just things that, we're sitting around thinking, oh, I really think we should solve this problem, but talking with the community, those people who serve in the nonprofits, those people that are on the front lines of addressing societal issues day in and day out. Talk to those people. That's really important. You can involve key employee and community representatives in the decision-making and planning process. So it doesn't just have to be the C-suite executives. You can have a task force of people from across the organizational hierarchy, but it's also important that you make sure that you involve the community in that process. Bring them into the discussion, help them be part of deciding the scope and scale, the types of issues to be addressed, and what you're going to do. Start an organization-wide employee, community partner, social impact educational initiative. So you're going to have to help some employees understand what all this means and what you're trying to accomplish. You're also going to have to help people in the community understand what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish and how they fit into it. So having a comprehensive plan in place and then implementing that kind of an educational initiative, and having some key passionate employees behind those educational initiatives is going to be really important. Listen to the community partner organizations' living expertise. I see this all the time at the university. I'm a professor. I have a PhD. I do a lot of research. So I could have the tendency to say, well, I'm the expert. I'm going to go solve your problems for you. Perhaps that's a challenge in academia, where sometimes there's a little bit of intellectual arrogance that can happen. Now, certainly I bring expertise with me in my background and experience, my research, whatever. That's one type of expertise, but there's another type of expertise, and that comes from the people who are on the front lines doing things each and every day to try to tackle organizational challenges. That is what you need to tap into. That is very important. And so listen to them. They are living experts, even if they're not, academic experts or professional experts, but they're living experts. They're doing it each and every day, and they have insights that will be vital to the success of your initiatives. I think it's important to develop a project sustainability and assessment plan. Now, this is later on in the process. You're going to be doing a lot of work before you get to that point, but you don't want to be rolling with your events and your programming and your initiatives with no sustainability or assessment plan in place. How are you going to know if you're being successful? How are you going to make sure that this can gain momentum and then maintain momentum over time, so that it's not like this huge push of energy for 6 months and a year, and then things just start to die down and it just fades and goes away? What mechanisms are you going to put in place to make sure that it becomes sustainable? What are you going to put in place in terms of the metrics that need to be measured? How are you going to assess success? What needs to happen? Okay, you want to put that plan in place. You also then want to find opportunities to celebrate, share what you have accomplished and what you learned. Some things will go well, some things won't go well, right? We're going to learn through the process and learn from your mistakes and improve, but you also need to celebrate, because there's going to be some amazing things that you're going to be able to accomplish through your work in trying to benefit the broader community. And then finally, this is not necessarily an action step, but it's a general foundational principle of do no harm. We, of course, we're trying to create positive social impact through catalyzing the efforts of our employees and the resources of our organization. That's important, positive social impact. But just because we have good intentions doesn't mean we're going to have good results. So we need to be very intentional. We have to try to think about unintended consequences. In part, that happens as we listen to living experts on the ground in the communities, listening to them, listening to their experiences. And then we need to ensure that we're not harming, despite our best intentions, that we're actually going to be benefiting. That we can avoid, we can't be perfect, and we're not going to avoid all missteps, but that we can avoid some of the major pitfalls that can occur. And we can do that if we're thoughtful, if we are strategic, and if we put time in advance into how we're approaching things. All right, as I wrap things up, I did want to just call your attention to an article that actually is just out today, this morning, in Forbes, titled Maximizing Employee Engagement by Leveraging an Organization's Social Impact Strategy. That's a catchy title, right? Now, I had planned to do this webinar on this topic several months ago when I scheduled it, before I had written this article, before it had been accepted to be published in Forbes. But given the topic for today, given your interest in this topic, I figure this is another resource that could be beneficial for you, that largely is reinforcing a lot of things we talked about together. But I hope you'll take a look at that and let me know when you have any thoughts or questions. As I wrap things up, I just want to reiterate that I would love to continue this discussion with any of you. I'm very passionate about the social impact work. Of course, I do a lot of work in the HR and people management world, in leadership, organizational development, change management, all these different issues. And there's certainly overlap. And if you think of it in terms of a Venn diagram, there's opportunities for, leveraging leadership and change management and organizational development to also enhance people operations and drive a broader social impact, positive social impact to drive, positive societal outcomes. That's how I view it. I feel like these are not individual isolated elements, but they all go together. That's my passion. That's what I want to help organizations do. That's what I want. I want to help organizations help their surrounding communities be a better corporate citizen, engage their employees, so they can attract and retain the best people and really, really leverage their capacities. With that, I'm going to end. Thank you so much for participating today, and please let me know if and when you have any questions. Thank you.